Have you ever wondered what was the spark that ignited the flame of World War II? In the wake of World War I, Europe was a continent on edge, a powder keg waiting for a spark. The Treaty of Versailles had ended the Great War, yet it had also sown the seeds of resentment, particularly in Germany, where the terms were seen as punitive and unjust. The economic hardship of the Great Depression further exacerbated these tensions, pushing societies to the brink and paving the way for the rise of extremist ideologies. In this volatile climate, Adolf Hitler and the National Socialist Party rose to power in Germany. With their aggressive expansionist policies and virulent anti-Semitism, they shattered the uneasy peace that had held since the end of the First World War. Their first target? Poland. In the early hours of September 1, 1939, without a formal declaration of war, Germany invaded Poland. This blatant act of aggression was in direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles, which had guaranteed Poland's borders. Despite international condemnation, Hitler was undeterred. He believed, perhaps correctly, that the rest of Europe was too weary, too divided to intervene. But he had miscalculated. Britain and France, bound by treaties to protect Poland, could not stand idle. On September 3, 2 days after the invasion began, they declared war on Germany. This was not a decision taken lightly. It was a recognition that the policy of appeasement, of hoping that Hitler could be contained, had failed. It was a commitment to stand against aggression, against the dark shadow that was starting to spread across Europe. And so, the world was once again plunged into war, a war that would surpass all others in devastation. The initial years of World War II saw the Axis powers advancing rapidly, but what were the key victories that bolstered their confidence? Let's start with the fall of France. Germany, utilizing its blitzkrieg tactics, invaded France in May 1940. The French, despite having one of the largest armies in the world, were unprepared for the rapid assault. Within 6 weeks, France had fallen. The rapid defeat of such a major power sent shockwaves throughout the world and significantly boosted the confidence of the Axis powers. Now let's shift our focus across the English Channel to the Battle of Britain. In the summer of 1940, Germany turned its sights on Britain. The Luftwaffe, Germany's air force, launched a massive air campaign with the aim of gaining air superiority. However, the British Royal Air Force put up a stiff resistance. Though the battle was fierce, Britain held on, marking the first major check to Germany's advance. Meanwhile, on the other side of the globe, Japan was making its own advances. With an ambition to establish a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931 and later China in 1937. By 1942, Japan had expanded its reach across much of East and Southeast Asia and the Pacific, including the Philippines, Indochina, and numerous Pacific islands. These victories seemed to suggest an Axis triumph was inevitable. The rapid fall of France, the extensive territorial gains by Japan, and the relentless bombing campaign against Britain had indeed made the Axis powers a formidable force. However, as we'll see, fortunes in war can shift as rapidly as the winds. The resilience of the British during the Battle of Britain, the eventual entry of the United States into the war following the attack on Pearl Harbor, and the awakening of the Russian behemoth all signaled that the tide was beginning to turn. Despite initial victories, the Axis powers were soon to face significant challenges. When did the tides of war start to turn against the Axis powers? This question often lingers in the minds of those who delve into the depths of World War II's complex narrative. The year was 1942, a period of fierce battles and strategic maneuvers. Among these battles, the Battle of Stalingrad stands out as a turning point. This brutal conflict took place in the heart of the Soviet Union, where German forces sought to seize control of the city bearing Stalin's name. The battle was a grueling test of endurance and will. A bitter winter, dwindling supplies, and the relentless onslaught of the Red Army pushed the German troops to their limits. The once unstoppable German force suffered significant losses, both in terms of manpower and morale. The failure to capture Stalingrad marked a significant setback for the Axis powers, and the once invincible facade of the German war machine began to crack. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, another event was unfolding that would further shift the balance of power. On a calm Sunday morning in December 1941, the tranquility of Pearl Harbor was shattered by a surprise attack from the Japanese. This devastating assault resulted in a significant loss of life and a severe blow to the United States Pacific Fleet. But the attack on Pearl Harbor had an unintended consequence for the Axis powers. It served as a catalyst, propelling the United States out of its policy of isolation and directly into the global conflict. The industrial might and vast resources of the United States were now aligned against the Axis powers, adding a new dynamic to the war. These two events, the Battle of Stalingrad and the attack on Pearl Harbor, marked a significant shift in World War II. The seemingly unstoppable Axis powers were now on the back foot, grappling with the consequences of strategic miscalculations and a newly invigorated opposition. With the entry of the United States into the war, the balance began to shift. The tides of war were turning, setting the stage for the intense battles and dramatic events that were yet to come. As the war progressed, victory for the Allies became increasingly certain. But what were the final blows that ended World War II? In the twilight of the war, the Allies orchestrated a series of decisive maneuvers. Among them, the Normandy Invasion stands out as a turning point. In June of 1944, Allied forces launched Operation Overlord, the largest seaborne invasion in history. Thousands of troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, France, marking the start of a fierce and determined push against the Axis powers in Western Europe. The invasion was a gamble, but it paid off. The Allies gained a crucial foothold, and the Axis powers found themselves fighting a war on multiple fronts. While the Normandy invasion marked a pivotal moment in the European theater, a different kind of battle was brewing in the Pacific. Japan, an Axis power, was still holding strong. The Allies decided on a strategy that, while controversial, would change the course of history. Strategic bombing of Japan was initiated, and the devastation was immense. Cities were laid to waste, and the human toll was staggering. But the final, resounding blow was yet to come. In August of 1945, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The destruction was beyond anything the world had ever seen. The bombs, nicknamed Little Boy and Fat Man, claimed hundreds of thousands of lives and left an indelible mark on the world's conscience. Faced with such overwhelming devastation, Japan had little choice but to surrender. On August 15th, Emperor Hirohito officially announced Japan's unconditional surrender, marking the end of World War II. And with that, the most devastating war in human history came to an end. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief, but the scars of the war were deep and far-reaching. The world had changed, and the effects of World War II would be felt for generations to come. World War II left an indelible mark on human history. But what were the immediate and lasting impacts? To understand these, we need to look at 3 major events that followed the war: the establishment of the United Nations, the onset of the Cold War, and the decolonization of Africa and Asia. In the aftermath of the war, nations globally recognized the need for a global peacekeeping body to prevent such a catastrophe from happening again. This led to the birth of the United Nations, an international organization founded in 1945, aimed at fostering international cooperation and preventing future conflicts. Indeed, the UN has, since its inception, played a crucial role in maintaining global peace and promoting human rights. Yet, even as the world sought peace, new tensions began to rise, giving birth to a different kind of war: the Cold War. This was a period of geopolitical tension between 2 superpowers who emerged from World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union. While it did not involve direct military conflict, the Cold War was marked by an arms race, political propaganda, and proxy wars that lasted for over 4 decades, shaping much of the world's political and social landscape during the second half of the 20th century. Simultaneously, World War II also marked the beginning of the end for many colonial empires. Decolonization, the process through which colonies became independent nations, accelerated in Africa and Asia. This was in part due to the weakened state of the colonial powers after the war, and also because the war had stirred up nationalist movements in these regions. The wave of decolonization brought about the emergence of many new nations, reshaping the geopolitical map. World War II changed the world in fundamental ways, many of which are still felt today. It was a war that left scars, but it also sparked changes that led to a new world order, one that continues to evolve and shape our lives even to this day.